Welcome to This Week in Aviation, brought to you by AviatorDB. I'm Mark Preston. The investigation into a K2 Airways 737 cargo crash off Pakistan widens, as authorities seal the airline's offices at Karachi. The FAA opens a probe after two Delta jets came onto converging paths over Atlanta. Federal investigators examine a loss of separation between Marine One and an Envoy Air regional jet near Reagan National. And severe turbulence injures 17 aboard an Air India A320neo bound for New Delhi. 4 stories this week and a common thread running through them: air traffic control, separation, and the safety questions that follow a serious event. Here are this week's stories. We begin off the coast of Pakistan. The investigation into the K2 Airways Boeing 737 cargo crash off Pakistan expanded this week, as authorities sealed the offices of K2 Airways at Karachi Airport and handed the carrier's records to investigators. The aircraft, a K2 Airways Boeing 737 freighter, went down in the Arabian Sea near Karachi. The aircraft carried 5 crew members and lost contact with air traffic control before wreckage was located near Omara. Early reports indicate the flight may have experienced navigation system issues prior to the accident. The reported navigation malfunction raises questions that will only be answered with hard evidence, whether it points to a maintenance issue, an avionics failure, or how the crew responded. None of that can be confirmed from debris alone. Sealing the airline's offices signals that investigators are looking closely at the carrier's records and oversight. For now, this remains an open accident investigation with more questions than answers, and a recovery operation that will shape everything that follows. The findings could carry weight for cargo safety oversight across Pakistan and the wider region. From an ocean recovery to a control tower error, we turn next to Atlanta. The FAA has opened an investigation into a near collision at Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport after 2 Delta Airlines jets came onto converging paths during a go-around. According to the agency, the conflict followed an air traffic control coordination error. One aircraft was executing a go-around, a routine maneuver, an aborted landing followed by a climb-out, when the 2 jets ended up on paths that brought them too close together. No casualties were reported, but the event was serious enough to trigger a federal review. Go-arounds are among the more demanding moments in tower operations. They are routine in the sense that pilots train for them constantly, but they inject an aircraft back into a busy traffic flow at low altitude, often with little warning. That places a premium on controllers coordinating cleanly and quickly. When that coordination breaks down, the margins compress fast. Central to understanding how this conflict was resolved are the separation standards controllers work to maintain, and the collision avoidance system in the cockpit, TACAS, which alerts crews to converging traffic and can direct them to climb or descend. Investigators will look at whether cockpit alerts, pilot technique, or both kept the 2 aircraft apart. Atlanta is among the busiest airports in the world. The density and complexity of operations there leave little room for error, and a near collision at a hub of that scale raises system-wide questions about controller workload, traffic volume, and how quickly a normal operation can turn hazardous. The FAA's review is ongoing. What investigators find will bear on procedures well beyond Atlanta. From one of the nation's busiest hubs to its most sensitive airspace, we move to Washington. Federal investigators have opened a probe after Marine One and an Envoy Air regional jet lost separation near Reagan National Airport. The FAA and the NTSB are both examining the event. No collision was reported, but the loss of separation was significant enough to draw federal attention, and it carries added weight for one reason. It is the first such incident since stricter safety protocols were put in place following an earlier crash. The airspace around Reagan National is among the most tightly managed in the country. It sits in the heart of the capital, mixing commercial traffic with military and government flights, including the presidential helicopter fleet. Managing helicopter routes alongside busy commercial corridors is a persistent operational challenge there, and one that the post-crash procedures were specifically designed to address. That is what makes this case notable. The tighter protocols were meant to prevent exactly this kind of conflict. Now investigators must determine whether those procedures worked as intended, whether they were followed, and why 2 aircraft under heightened rules still came closer than they should have. Even without a collision, an event like this can carry major policy implications. A loss of separation involving a presidential aircraft in the capital's airspace is precisely the kind of case that draws scrutiny from Congress and from the agencies responsible for keeping military and civil traffic apart. The investigation is in its early stages. What it concludes will be a test of whether the reforms adopted after the earlier crash are holding. From Washington, we turn to the skies over India. 17 people were injured aboard an Air India flight this week after the aircraft hit severe turbulence over eastern India. The flight, Air India 2379, an Airbus A320neo, was traveling from Phuket to New Delhi on August 4th when it encountered severe turbulence over Odisha. The aircraft dropped about 300 feet in the sudden encounter. 17 passengers and crew were injured. India's aviation regulator, the DGCA, has opened an investigation. A 300-foot altitude loss happens in an instant, and it is enough to throw anyone not strapped in against the cabin ceiling. That is why turbulence remains one of the most common causes of in-flight injury, and why crews stress keeping seatbelts fastened even when the sign is off. The investigation will look at what the crew knew and when. That includes the weather information available before and during the flight, the forecasting and avoidance tools in the cockpit, and whether the turbulence could have been anticipated or routed around. It will also examine cabin procedures, whether crew and passengers were seated and secured when the encounter hit. Turbulence injuries are a growing concern on busy international routes, and they sit at the intersection of weather, operational planning, and how effectively airlines communicate the risk to passengers. The core defense has not changed. A fastened seatbelt is the single most effective protection against a sudden drop. The DGCA's findings will determine whether this was an unavoidable weather event or one where better information or procedure could have reduced the toll. Also, in aviation news this week, Air Canada has named its next leader. The carrier appointed Anko van der Werff, currently Chief Executive of SAS, as its next President and Chief Executive Officer. The transition takes effect in January of 2027. Current President and Chief Executive Michael Rousseau is scheduled to retire on August 31st. Van der Werff will inherit a range of pressing files at Canada's largest carrier, from fleet planning to labor relations to intensifying international competition. Executive transitions at major flag carriers often signal shifts in network strategy and long-term direction, and global air traffic set a new record this summer. Flight Radar 24 logged 153,359 commercial flights on July 23rd, a single-day high. That figure beat the previous record, set in 2023, by 11.8%. Heavy Northern Hemisphere summer travel demand drove the surge. The number frames the sheer scale of global aviation activity and the strain it places on airports and air traffic control systems, as peak season volumes continue to test capacity across the network. That's This Week in Aviation. For the latest aviation news, visit aviatordb.com. I'm Mark Preston. We'll see you next week.